Please join me in welcoming our panelists for the Amazon for Social Impact panel.
Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Great. Somebody in the back is doing really well. We got 2 big thumbs up. Well, we've got a nice, beautiful view this afternoon. We really appreciate you being here with us today. My name is Allie Flicker, and I work on the corporate communications team here at Amazon. I've been at Amazon a little bit more than 3 years, and I am honored to be kind of facilitating this panel today with some of these folks who are really entrenched in the work that Amazon does in the Seattle community and communities all over the world where we operate. So I'll do some brief intros and then we'll start chatting. First over here we have Maggie Carter, who is the head of AWS Disaster Response. She leads a team dedicated to helping nonprofits from a technology perspective when disaster strikes. And then we have Cornelia Robinson, who is the head of AWS in Communities. Her team seeks to deepen relationships with the communities in which AWS builds, operates, and grows its physical infrastructure. And then right next to me here, we have Matt Wisner, who leads the Amazon Future Engineer Program, a flagship initiative under the umbrella of the Amazon in the Community team. And Amazon Future Engineer seeks to provide comprehensive computer science education for children and young adults in underserved and underrepresented communities across the country. And before we get started chatting, I just want to say, and you've probably noticed this throughout the day, these folks up here know a ton about the work that Amazon is doing in communities, community engagement and philanthropy, but they certainly are not the end-all be-all of community engagement, sorry. As you know, kind of because Amazon is so big, we're doing so many different things. So this will be really great to learn about their teams, but remember there's so many other programs going on too, so keep that in mind. And I saw a lot of those programs kind of on display over there. So let's get started. Maggie, we'll start with you. I'm gonna ask everybody to just talk a little bit about how and why they decided to come work for Amazon, kind of how you got landed here.
Yeah, happy to. So I've been here just over 2 years, and prior to coming to AWS, I led the partnerships team with UNICEF USA. And I had been working with Marko Semovich, who I see in the back of the room, and Doug Van Dyke on pulling together collaboration between UNICEF and AWS, and then also been talking to Bettina about Disaster Relief by Amazon and UNICEF working together. And after quite some time working on that collaboration, Marko and Doug told me that I was informed that they were going to be opening up a role, and I jumped at the opportunity, just excited about all of the possibilities that AWS can really help support nonprofit organizations responding to disasters. So I really leapt at that opportunity.
Cornelia, what about you?
So I've been with AWS for about 6.5 years. And before leading in Communities, which is AWS's infrastructure community organization, I led our global services procurement and vendor management organization. And in doing that, it took me all over the world, and I got a chance to really learn different communities. And I realized that there was a gap that we had a big opportunity to fill. And so, that's one of the things that I really worked to do, is to start filling that gap. Before Amazon, I was actually in acquisitions and procurement for a federal contractor in the DC area. And so, it's not a linear path. It's kind of windy, but here I am.
Cool. What about you, Matt?
I've been at Amazon for a little over 8 years, and I started in talent acquisition and recruiting software engineers to Amazon. And spending time there, as we're encouraged at Amazon, got curious about how we're recruiting software engineers, how do they prepare themselves for this job, and then looking at that education path and just begun to realize there's a big opportunity for more people to learn computer science. I came from a very rural area where the high school didn't have computer science. My mom still works there. I actually was interested in it when I went to college, and it was a big struggle not having any exposure and then getting to that point and trying to do it. From there, I kind of identified an opportunity for us and perhaps for Amazon to play a role there in making sure more students could have access to computer science. And pitched the idea to different leaders in Amazon, got some folks excited, got resourcing and funding, and we started kind of small, incubating in a business group, and then moved to a central location with our broader Amazon community organization, and scaled, and now we're reaching thousands of schools and millions of kids.
You kind of hit on this, and I want you guys to talk about this too. I gave a really brief intro to what teams you're on. Tell me a little bit more, dig in a little bit more about what your teams are actually doing and how those teams got started. So you kind of hit on that. Do you want to add any more about that?
Sure, so Amazon Future Engineer, at a very high level, we want to make sure students have access to high quality computer science education. We're kind of looking at them by their different age groups and what's important to them. So for younger students, trying to provide inspiration through kind of brief activities and giving them exposure so they're not scared when they see it later. And then in high school, we get full courses, teacher training, and tutor support to the classroom. And then post-high school, we have scholarship and internship interlocked, so they get a 4-year scholarship, and all the scholarship recipients get a guaranteed internship at Amazon. And again, as I mentioned, this is one of a few programs in the broader Amazon and the community portfolio, which also includes the other stuff like disaster relief.
Right, and some of the Right Now Needs programs that focus on homelessness, housing, disaster relief. Great. I want to talk a little bit about what exactly your team does. You said you identified this need, but what are you guys doing now?
Yeah, so we have 22 geographic locations where we build and operate our infrastructure for AWS, and essentially those are the places where we build the cloud. And so in those places, we want to make sure that we're being really intentional about being a good neighbor, and we strive to go really deep as opposed to broad. So we have a few focus areas: investing in future builders, which is STEAM education. We have a lot of programs around STEAM education, Girls Tech Days, Family Tech Days. We focus on environmental stewardship, and then we also focus on workforce development. One of the programs that I'm really proud about is last year in Dublin, we launched a data center technician training program. And through that program, we were really intentional about working with a local college. We developed training programs in conjunction with the college. And then non-traditional students were able to receive internships to work in our data centers during the course of their studies, and then they've converted to full-time employees now. And so, we really do focus on technical workforce development.
And how did your program get started?
My program got started, as I mentioned earlier, I was leading our services procurement organization and vendor relationship management, and I saw that there was an opportunity, right? There was a gap, and so similar to what Matt did, I got a lot of people excited. I put together some documents and the justification to say, look, this is what we need to be doing. And everybody that I spoke to said, oh, you're right, we do need to be doing that. And I was like, well, here's how we're gonna do it. And so, I started doing that as like a second job in addition to my really full-time job.
In your spare time, right?
Yeah, in all of my spare time. And one day, someone came to me very high up in our organization and said, you've created a role, and now we want you to build this out. And so that's what I did.
What about you, Maggie? Tell us a little bit about what your team is doing day to day and kind of how this team came to be.
Yeah, so our team, we are, like I said, we're supporting nonprofit organizations, but also government entities as well, helping them to better prepare and respond to disasters, leveraging AWS technology, our services. So for example, the last 2 years with the hurricanes, we helped support the American Red Cross by spinning up a virtual call center within 24 hours and provided over 100 employees as volunteers to help in their peak demand time after Hurricanes Harvey in 2017 and Florence in 2018. So that's one example of what we do, but how we do it is, so how we got started was our working backwards process here at Amazon. And so across AWS, we researched, who those key customers are that are, responding to disasters, and what are their critical needs where technology can help support their efforts. and then worked across the company, primarily on our service team, to identify what services were available to support them. And we launched the program last year. We got the green light. We launched the program publicly last year in 2018 after we had a few use cases under our belt and got that support. And at a foundational level, leveraging existing services. And now we're moving towards scaling, expanding and growing the program globally, and really looking at how can we influence service or product roadmaps, right, to really help support our customers' greatest challenges in disasters, whether it has to do with operating at the edge, which is what we say, which is low connectivity or no connectivity environments, for example. And so that's where we are now, really pushing roadmaps.
And your team, of course, works too with the disaster relief at Amazon team, who's also supporting in different ways with operations and logistics in time of disaster. So together, you're quite the force. Talk to me a little bit about, you've all kind of mentioned this, but it might be helpful. What do you think makes your programs uniquely Amazon? We talk a lot about how Amazon can provide support in community engagement, in disaster relief, what have you. Sometimes we're the only ones who can do it this way. So what makes your program really stand out and special for Amazon? Sorry, anybody?
I think by the nature of the program with Amazon Future Engineer, we're taking a long-term view at this and trying to solve this problem, which is very Amazonian, I think. If you listen to earnings calls, we kind of take a long-term approach to many of our programs and businesses. So just by taking that long-term view and understanding that's important to getting to good outcomes is Amazonian. But a few specific examples for Amazon Future Engineer. All our high school students get access to AWS Educate, for example. So a very concrete example, so if students are building a website project within their computer science course, you can now very quickly, within a day, put a chatbot in your site using AWS Lex service. So this is, and there's students that have expressed, and I've seen them in the classroom, their delight over having this kind of industry connection, and these are things that our software engineers use every day. So that's a kind of tangible connection, and then even more so is all the scholarship recipients have an internship at Amazon, so it's definitely bringing them here and exposing them kind of to the culture and what's possible.
Yeah, I think that what makes our program uniquely Amazonian, and this is something that Maggie also alluded to, is really our process of working backwards. And I know there's a working backwards session tomorrow. I encourage all of you to attend. It's so unique. So I don't figure out what's going to work best for our customers, just sitting in a room. Right. We go out into the community, we talk to the people who live in the community, we talk to our employees who also live and work in the community, we sit down with nonprofit organizations, we collaborate with them, and we figure out, what are your goals? How can we make an impact? What are the types of programs that we could institute that would work well for you? And then that's what we do. And so we'll pilot something, and then we'll evaluate it, against our success criteria, which we've created in conjunction with those customers. So for us, our customers are the community members who are in these locations where we're building and operating data centers, and that's how we decide what we're going to do. So, I think a good example is, I mentioned Girls Tech Day. We decided to do that not because we were sitting in a room and thought, oh, this would be a really great idea. Let's do a Girls Tech Day. I was sitting in a conference room with a nonprofit organization. And we started talking about the gender divide and how much we need to be doing to get girls really excited and engaged in technology. And so we started whiteboarding this idea of a Girls Tech Day, and then we said, okay, now let's go do it. This was something that they wanted us to do, and we had the ability to make it happen, so we worked on it together, and we did our first one last year in October, and this year we're going to be doing 6 of them around the world. So that's what we do. We think about what our customers want, we talk to them, we develop the program in conjunction with our nonprofit collaborators, and then we pilot it, and once we pilot it and we determine, okay, this actually is something that's making an impact, then we go big fast.
Yeah, so to that point, very similar. So last year at the Washington, D.C. Public Sector Summit for AWS, we had a session and a demo just talking about the art of possible, right? Leveraging AWS technology in disasters. And we were showcasing using drone technology and to collect aerial imagery and being able to analyze pre and post incident imagery on a snowball edge. And a developer tweeted about it, and then we had the Red Cross and a bunch of other NGOs who were tweeting at us, hey, we want portable OpenStreetMaps to run on Snowball Edge. And so from that, we brought together a working group of community-based organizations who operate globally to really dive deep on what are their requirements, what are their needs, and then a partner organization, a technology partner organization, Element 84, actually built the portable OpenStreetMap solution and come full circle at Public Sector Summit in DC this year, went public with this POSSUM solution for the community. And in that process, we've also identified 3 other critical technology-related solutions that the community needs. And so we will then go through that working process, backwards process again with those community-based organizations.
Tell me a little bit, you've all kind of hit on this now, but talk to me a little bit about how exactly your team works with nonprofits, how that kind of plays into what you're doing and how you think about those relationships. And Cornelia, why don't you start us off?
I think that when I think about how we work with nonprofit organizations, it really is a collaboration, right? There's no set way. It's not like, we always do this one thing with nonprofits. Usually it starts with a conversation. And then we start thinking big, and we start thinking about, how we're going to make an impact, and we start talking about what their goals are and, how we can help them meet those goals. And then we go from there. It really just starts with a conversation, but we always try to think big. We worked with the Irish Computer Society a couple of years ago. They had an initiative called Tech Week, and so, they really wanted to make Tech Week something that was bigger than just Ireland. And so we also wanted to do something similar to a Tech Week, because we thought, okay, if we do something like this, again, we can get kids really excited about technology and let them realize that, there's a place for everybody in technology. So we partnered with them on Tech Week, and then a year later, we worked with them, and we worked with Maggie's team and other teams across the business, and we did a Tech Week for Service with organizations all around the world, and we, were able to increase the Irish Computer Society's impact. We were able to get kids all around the world excited about technology. We had students in Cape Town who were using Amazon Chime to communicate on video with students in Ireland, and they were talking about their learnings and teaching other language, and they were all so excited. But it all started, just with the initial conversation, and so that's what we do. That's how we work with nonprofit organizations.
Maggie?
Yeah, it does. It starts with, like you said, a conversation. It could start here at the Imagine conference. It starts with a tweet. It can come through an account manager or from another group. I've gotten people that come through the Disaster Relief by Amazon team with, here's a challenge, and we think AWS is probably best suited to help support this organization. And really, it starts with that conversation where we're trying to understand what is that organization's challenge and how is AWS uniquely positioned to help support it. Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's 3 things. We learn from them, we work on advocacy with them, and then we execute with them. So on learning from them, we work with organizations such as Code.org, who's been doing this arguably since the start of kind of computer science in your public classroom. They've reached millions of students. We have a lot, I think, to gain from that collaboration. Advocacy, believe it or not, computer science isn't kind of a God-given right in any traditional school system already. In fact, it's only in 40% of the public high schools in America, so there's still some hills to climb there, and we work together on kind of approaching that and making sure policymakers also believe that's an important thing. And then last, working kind of with them in collaboration to execute. So for example, with the Code.org relationship, last year we worked with them on their popular Hour of Code, which was a Hour of Code dance party where kids were choreographing animated figures to their favorite songs using code. And our interns actually coded features in that hour of code lesson, so it's cool.
When you guys are looking for new nonprofit partners, or when you're kind of vetting out a partnership or a collaboration, what really stands out to you when working with nonprofits? What moments have resonated with you, or things that you're like, oh, I want to start doing that, or just lessons you've learned throughout this process? And Matt, why don't you start?
I think how they're thinking about their customer and their problems. I guess I'm most engaged with them when they kind of have these interesting insights, either that I've thought about before or haven't thought about before, which just, I guess, leads me to believe they're like deep in the problem and committed, and we're in this kind of movement together. So that's one piece of it's just this customer kind of centric focus for the nonprofit. And then I think also like this kind of, what are their ambitions? Like, where do they want to go? And are they kind of looking at the scale and size of Amazon? And I guess to that point, it's less interesting for me to have a nonprofit come or I come to them, and then it ends up just being like, please give us money. Hopefully we can utilize beyond that Amazon's kind of unique technology, scale, services, employees that will engage with them in more creative ways.
Cornelia, what about you?
Yeah, data is really big. You know, we always like to look at data and understand, you know, what the impact is and how we can help an organization make an even bigger impact. But, you know, obviously when an organization is being intentional about measuring, then it helps us, you know, figure out how we can do what we want to do, you know, deeper and faster, and really just help amplify the work that the nonprofit is doing. And then, you know, the other thing is the nonprofits focus on their customers, like Matt said. It's, you know, how are they working backwards from their customer? How well do they know their customers? How well do they know, you know, the clients that they serve? And then what role can we play in that? You know, like I said, we have 3 focus areas: STEAM, education, workforce development, and environment. And so that's also something that's big for us. You know, what are they doing in one of those 3 areas?
So I'd say for us, in terms of successful collaboration, right, and what's worked and what lessons learned, I'd say lessons learned have been, you know, really when we're identifying an opportunity or an organization to work with, ensuring on the front end that the organization, you know, is going to invest in, say, their staff training, you know, really knowing how to use the technology or the solution that you're going to be building or whatever they're going to be using. Because the worst thing that we could do is invest in a solution and then the organization has not been enabled to use it, right? Whether we're providing that training or, you know, it's them identifying key staff to then, you know, receive that training from us. So that's one element that is required for success, right? Other areas, you know, organizations that really understand that working backwards process and understand why we need to dive deep on the challenge. We think big, and then we start small, right? And then we show success, we learn from it, right? We have that feedback loop, and then we continue to expand and grow that relationship based on, the roadmap that we've built together.
Mm-hmm. You guys have hit in just chatting on a lot of things that we talk about a lot at Amazon, this idea of thinking big, working backwards, and another thing that I think a lot of Amazonians feel comfortable talking about and talk about that might seem funny on the outside is being really vocally self-critical. We're okay to say, hey, this isn't working, or we need to figure out a better solution, and to just kind of start again and start from scratch, and we're comfortable saying that, we're comfortable talking about that with each other. So tell me about a time, or kind of tell me about a learning where you feel like you've had a blind spot maybe in working with nonprofits and working in a space where you're not the most familiar, and kind of how you learned from that and what was tough about it. You all look like you're thinking, so anyone who's ready first.
So for me, we have this focus on underserved and underrepresented children in computer science. And we had some programs going on with K through 8 students or younger students in general for after-school camps, after-school workshops, and summer camps, and realized this is a hard thing this is kind of a tall order for your average underserved family to accommodate. So hard for a parent that's working all the time or a single parent home to potentially get their child to and from this camp. So this was a blind spot. I was, had been from a different background myself, didn't see, and we kind of learned as we went, and this has kind of led to some insights and thinking like we want to meet children where they're at and work into traditional school days, which requires also a lot of relationship building with school systems and how they wish to reach these same children. The other thing I'd mention is how content's being created can be more equitable than it is today and more inclusive than it is today for computer science. Computer science, the Advanced Placement Computer Science Java course is notorious. It's been around forever. It is not, your average high school kid wouldn't say it's like they're interested in it. It's a fun course. It's a cool course. It's kind of a dreaded course. And which has led to this new course being developed, which is Computer Science Principles, which is having a lot of headway in terms of getting more students and different types of students involved. But even like working with Code.org, for example, or like you should be thinking about kind of when you're not only working with them, but with other partners, like how are you, like have a few students in mind that are from these different backgrounds that maybe you met, and how are you reaching them with this course? And then if this person in the course that's being featured doesn't look like them, that could be just a barrier in itself. So that's a few things that we've figured out.
Okay.
I would say that for me, it's again, it goes back to thinking big, but thinking big without having the nonprofit or the organization at the table. Our program is only 2 years old, and initially there was so much excitement, and everybody comes to you with all of these ideas, and they sound really good, and they sound really great, and like, we're gonna send kids to space. No, I'm just kidding, we didn't really say that. But, people have all of these great ideas, and it's like, okay, yeah, let's go do it. But then you sit down with a nonprofit, and you talk with them about it, and they're like, no, wait, hold on, that doesn't work. Why would we do that? And so I think for me, that's just been a really big learning, and it goes back to, our principle of customer obsession and thinking about what customers want and, trying to deliver on that, and not getting too far ahead of yourself without thinking about who it is that you're serving and making sure that, you're doing the things that are actually going to create impact in the communities and create the type of impact that we want to create, and that we're not just doing things for the sake of doing something that's splashy or that's going to get a lot of attention, but that we're really being intentional about the impact that we're going to have.
Blind spot, right? So for us, I'd say, and this is being self-critical, is it was much more operational, but having to dive deep on importing and exporting devices, right, globally. And so, building out this program, yes, we understood that there was an element there that we would have to build out that end-to-end process and work with the appropriate teams on that and organizations, but at the time didn't realize how much time would be dedicated to figuring out that end-to-end process for importing and exporting globally.
In talking to some of the folks here and talking to folks who work for nonprofits in this field, what do you want folks to know about community engagement by and large at Amazon? And again, at the beginning of this chat, I mentioned you guys do not speak for every single one of the community groups here at Amazon, but obviously 3 big ones. What do you want folks to know about working with you? What do you want nonprofits to kind of keep in mind as they pursue opportunities to work with Amazon or when they're thinking about kind of how they're moving forward? Oh, yep.
Yeah. So I would say understanding how the organization works in terms of the leadership principles, right? And how we incorporate those into not just our work, but our relationships with organizations. And then also understanding that it is about a collaboration, and we're not looking to just write a check, but what are our unique assets that we can bring to the table? And then really thinking creatively, think big, but then how do we build that out together? And another, important piece is, because I've had this in past lives, and then I've seen this once in the last 2 years, but only once, where somebody said, hey, I have this challenge, can you solve it and own the solution? And we're like, whoa, no, we do this together, right? And this is something that the community or you would own. So, really understanding what your challenge is, try to figure out what group within Amazon is appropriate for that solution, and really, think big, think for the long term, and then work in sprints. You want to go?
Yeah, Maggie, I think that you really summed it up for me too. It's the same thing. I can't stress enough just the collaboration, and that's one of the words that you said. Think of us as someone who you collaborate with. So we have a lot to learn from you. And we also want to share with you, and so it really is a two-way conversation, so that we can work together to really make a positive impact.
I think the relationship building is really important, and sometimes those things start small but become something significant later. That's how basically everything in our program has evolved. We've started something small, contained it, had a good pilot, and kind of then grew exponentially after that. I tend to be an introverted person, but I've talking with other folks and learning from them, and then kind of building that relationship is always fruitful, and I'll talk to anybody. And I wouldn't on the same token, underestimate the power of a cold call. Like, we have an email on our site, people contact us all the time, I talk to all of them. So that's effective too, in terms of kind of starting a conversation. And then after that, I think I'm really inspired by kind of brainstorming with them and off the insights they have, and really enjoy that and we're thinking about like project-based learning opportunities, and we have opportunities that we've thought about that weren't even on our roadmap before, where perhaps we can get students in this interest of kind of intersecting computer science and liberal arts, having them code original pieces of music using Python code, super cool. And this is something we've learned from a nonprofit group. Those two things, I think, building the relationship and then having fun with the brainstorm processes.
Obviously, we can always innovate, and we're continuing. All of you mentioned your programs that you're operating right now are pretty new. What do you think, though, is working about your program right now, and why do you think that is?
For us, we pushed ourselves and organizations to really think through what is the art of possible in leveraging technology to support their efforts. And so, we've actually, we have some failures, but we have a lot of successes under our belt. And then that just really starts to get our partner or our organizations that we work with and other organizations to start to really think through, wow, what could we do? We have this, and then it's like, all right, let's build upon, this use case. So for us, that's been really fun to see, how it's evolved, starting from one use case, and then other organizations are building upon that. Yep.
Yeah, what's worked really well for us also is our ability to move pretty fast. Mm-hmm. So, it's been just 2 years now, and we started out doing community engagement in one community, and now we're doing community engagement all over the world in all of the infrastructure locations that AWS has, and our employees are really excited and motivated. We look at metrics all the time. Since the beginning of the year, we've done 134 community engagement activities just this year, and so we're really we try to implement something, and then once it works, just go fast. And so that's something that's been really successful for us.
think I'm proud of the scale we've achieved in terms of thousands of high schools as one example, but I don't think we're really, I wouldn't say we're successful. I'm kind of a glass half empty type of guy, for better or worse. I think we have a long ways to go, and I wouldn't turn in my badge until, all kids have access to computer science education regardless of their socioeconomic status, their ethnicity, their race. So I don't think the job's done until that's happening. And then the other kind of bar I have is you go to your average high schooler who's walking down the street and you say, is computer science in your school? And the answer should be yes. Is computer science cool? The answer should be yes. And then do they want to do it, or are they doing it? The answer should be yes. And that's a tall order, by the way. I go into high school classrooms and these like, what's cool is that's actually a big deal. And getting them to participate and even engage, because you get access, but then the job after that is like, are they even interested? And how do you get them engaged into this and reach them where they're at and kind of bring them over?
Tell me about, in working on these teams, tell me about a moment that really stands out to you, which I hear you, we haven't mastered any of this. Obviously, there's still a ton of work to be done. You just felt like, man, I'm doing the right thing. That felt really good, or this really neat moment that you saw in working in these programs.
I think there's a couple that stand out. One is when we did a field test in Peru with We Robotics and a few UN entities in the Peruvian Air Force near the Amazon border. And we were working with them to capture the aerial imagery along the Amazon border, analyzing it locally, again, on that snowball edge, and being able to do that in real time with no connectivity. That was a pretty cool moment, because before that point, it was, here's our theory, we're gonna build it and test it locally, and then now we're gonna go into the field, and we're gonna do it with some pretty important organizations, and it worked. So that was an aha moment, a wow moment for us.
Something for me that really stands out that happened just a couple weeks ago. We recently launched a few STEAM labs, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math labs in schools in India. And I had an opportunity to be there for the launch of the labs. And there was a little girl who had never touched a computer before. And she was so excited to meet us because of the labs that we had launched in the schools. And what she told us was, it had only been 20 days, but in 20 days, she went from having never touched a computer before to creating business cards and advertisements for people in her community, in her village. And she was helping women with their businesses. And I was just like, wow, if a kid can do that in 20 days, it was just amazing. I just had the best feeling, and just to see that when you do something that you may think is small, the impact that it can have on someone, it's the sort of thing that it keeps me going regardless of how much work it is, how many hours we're putting in. It's like to actually be able to sit down with somebody who says, this is what that meant to me, and it's changing my life. It was just phenomenal. I think another story from that trip is that there was a school that told us that because of those STEAM labs, they had 80 students enroll in school. So parents actually were able to take their kids out of private schools and put them in the government school, which helps them, from an income standpoint. And just in 30 days, they had seen enrollment of 80 students into this program. So those are the kinds of things that are just standout moments for me that get me excited about the impact that we can really make.
For me, it was easily the Amazon Future Engineer scholarships and giving those to those students. It was just, I'll work at Amazon forever if they keep letting me do that. And I personally packed each of the 100 boxes we sent out to those scholarship recipients. And then when the videos were coming back of their reactions, it was amazing. And kind of one of the stories we featured with a young gentleman named Leo, who goes to school in inner city Jersey. His mom's a first generation immigrant from Haiti. and he won the scholarship. I don't cry, but I cried. You could see just kind of the wave of emotion on the family and the Leo's face. Something had changed. Like, number one, it's nice to get this, but two, when I was watching these, I just felt like they're getting some validation from this. Like, I am good enough. I earned this painstakingly in many cases, and we have the power to do that with these scholarships. It was pretty amazing, and they all get to come next summer as interns, and I can't wait to meet them all and see what they can do at Amazon.
In the spirit of Imagine, what this conference is, tell me what you imagine for your teams in 10 years. You kind of talked about this a little before, so we'll start with you, but what do you imagine, what would you hope for your teams to be at in 10 years?
It's probably not the best thing to say, but I hope I don't have a job here. Or my job now is not the same one I'm doing, because there's no longer a great need for it, and it's in most of the schools across the world, and hopefully I had some part to play in that. Along with that, maybe otherwise, maybe one of the future engineers is my boss, and helping us kind of take the next steps and make sure it's cool to high schoolers. So those would be two things I think would be cool in 10 years.
Yeah, Matt, you kind of stole my thunder there. I was actually in Dublin during our tech week, and there was a little girl who looked up at me and said, I want to work here one day. You're going to work for me. And I was like, that'd be pretty awesome. And so I do imagine that. These students who we're working with, they are going to really solve some big world problems. I believe that they have the capability. I believe that they can and they will, and that's what I'm excited about. And the other thing is where we're building our physical infrastructure, I think about community obsession, right? We have the phrase customer obsession, and I want every community member to feel like we're a good neighbor. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about on my team is what are the attributes of a good neighbor? We're not talking about corporate social responsibility and all of that, just like what's a good neighbor? And in 10 years, everywhere where we are building and operating our infrastructure, I want for community members to be able to say that AWS is a good neighbor.
For me, you guys are the tearjerkers. Mine's much more, for us, I want that field worker on the ground after a disaster. They're not using pen and paper to collect data and then wait hours to have it analyzed somewhere else once they've somehow gotten that information back. We want to enable organizations and that field worker to be able to use technology at the edge. So really about reducing response times to make it more immediate.
Before we let everybody go, for anybody in the audience who thinks what you guys are doing might be a good fit for their organization or they just want to learn more, what is the best way to contact you guys after this? Again, remembering that there are a whole lot of teams at Amazon, but for these teams in particular.
Yeah, so for the AWS Disaster Response Program, it's AWS-DRP at Amazon.com.
For me, like I said, we operate in 22 locations right now, so we're focused on those places, but still, do feel free to reach out directly to me. I'll be around after this conversation, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and my email address is robbycorn@amazon.com.
AmazonFutureEngineer.com, we have contact listed there. I may regret saying this, but we respond to everybody who contacts us. We respond to them. And if nothing else, to build that first kind of touch and learn from them. And I don't remember the email off the top, but it's on our website, yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys very much for your time, and thanks for attending today. Enjoy the rest of your day.